Why Geoff Shaw?
Geoff Shaw, Avi, he is the best man for the job. He has the experience, he has the guts, he has the determination to be a great leader. And most importantly, he didn't leave the Liberal Party left him. They walked away from their values. They stopped caring about conservatism. They stopped caring about the family. They stopped caring about small business. They stopped caring about the individual. He left them, he's done the right thing, and he's come across to the #1 Conservative Party in this country, the United Australia Party. We will fight for traditional values now and forever.
Who are you? People don't know you, don't know the history of Victoria. Where do you come from? And then we'll talk about where you're going.
Well, first of all, born in Brisbane, but moved down here when I was 7 years old and moved to that place of Frankston, which is a great spot on the peninsula. Had my own business, accounting practice and financial planning practice and a couple of other things. And then went into politics in 2010 to 2014. And the reason I did was because I thought, gee whiz, Victoria's not going so well under a Brax Brumby government. But gee whiz, isn't it worse now under disastrous Dan? And so it's time to come back.
So what was it like then, and what's the difference between then and now?
Well, Dan Andrews was just as vicious back then as he is now. In 2014, no one really knew who he was. But after 200 daily sermons of dread over the last few years, he's just exposed himself more and more. So he was vile back then, and he's a monster now. He's just got worse and worse. I had the balance of power in Parliament, so they built that up, and both parties were attacking me constantly, saying, you've misused this, you've misused that, car entitlements and all this type of thing, which went through an ombudsman report, which said, there's nothing here. That went to the police and public prosecution, which dropped all charges. The only one to bring charges, of course, were the parliamentary committee, made up Liberal and Labor, who said, we'll find this guy and we'll suspend him from Parliament. And that's what happened. When you've got a mouth, Avi, you know what it's like. You've got a mouth against the establishment, against that duopoly of Liberal and Labor, you're going to be targeted.
So for those who say that you had a shot at it, you blew it, what would you say to them?
Well, I'm back. Dan Andrews has had 20 years, and 10 of those last 14 years he's been head of health. And how's our health system now? And we want to give him a go? They're crying out to say, hey, vote for us. Hang on, I'm not voting for the people who locked us up, who shot at us, who have taken this debt 7 times what it was when he took over in 2014. It was about $22 billion. 8 years later, it's more than 5 times that. And we want to give him a go? No chance. He's been in the public purse for all but 3 years of his post-university life. I don't want him in the public purse anymore. I don't want him in my home. I don't want him co-parenting my kids. I don't want him segregating Christians to non-Christians, targeting the Jewish synagogues, and separating people between, and calling us non-essential to essential, setting up an economy and call it the vaxxed economy, and people who haven't been, you're not part of it. That's not the Australia that I live in, and this guy is a disaster. He's a dictator, he's a tyrant, he's a bully, and he's got to be taken down this election.
So you've just released this recently. Why and what's it about?
The title says it all, Dan Andrews Unmasked, which is a bit of a play on words because he masked us up for so long. But we've exposed him for the guy that he is, the guy who took us the world's most livable city to the world's most lockdown city. So every chapter starts with D, from Decent Dan, which is our shortest chapter. It has 2 quotes, and that's it, because there's not much decent about this guy. As hard as you want to look, there's not much decent about this guy. So it goes Dictator Dan, Digger Dan is one of my favourite, where I interviewed Vietnam veterans and Army personnel, ex-Army officers retired, and how the lockdowns affected their lives. And the crazy things, Avi, where Dan Andrews allowed 1,400 just at last year's dawn service in the city at the Shrine. 2 hours later, he allowed 8,000 a march. 3 hours after that, 2 kilometres away, 74,000 people at the MCG.
It's a science, mate. Don't question the science.
Yes.
Are you telling us this whole book is questioning the science?
Part of it. It's about his 20 years in politics, not just about the COVID period. Of course, that's touched upon, more than touched upon, but his whole 20 years in Parliament, and what a disaster this guy has been throughout that whole 20 years. People should read it because it's a history book. Now, if you want to put your head in the sand, that's fine. A lot of people do. But if you want to remember and be able to pass this on to your friends as well come this election, it's an easy read. It needs to be done.
So why not the Liberal Party? Isn't that the real hope at the end of the day that they get in?
Well, look, the Liberal Party are lame. They're not even in the game now, are
What do
they?
you mean? Matthew Guy marched for Ukraine the other day. What do you mean? His eyes are not on the ball.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's a great seller. Here we are in Victoria. We need things for Victoria. That's great, doing some overseas stuff. Fantastic. Bit of virtual signalling again. But we're the grassroots of Victorians here.
Good luck, mate.
No, thanks. It's a history book. It's an educational book. It'll bring people... We have such... I don't know what I had for dinner 3 nights ago. I don't know if you do. I don't.
I do. Whatever I was fed.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly what I was fed. We were fed a whole lot of stuff by Dan Andrews, but we can't remember what that was. And this goes back through the history where people will forget. It's stuff straight from his mouth. There's things that you won't know in here as well. We never want to forget what this guy does, and we can't let that happen again in this state.